Okay. So the first thing I want to tell you, as I said, I didn't record all of last week's class, and I've also, well, any of it, none of it got recorded. And I also am updating the PowerPoint, so I've been adding slides, and there are 2 slides, I believe, only 2, that we're going to go through just very briefly that were already covered, but I want to make sure they're in the video because I don't remember if they're in last week's video or not. So they're fairly early on, and like I said, we will just I'll go through those 2 very quickly. And I know mostly what everybody did was ask questions at the end, but if you do have a question on a slide I'm on, go ahead and speak up, because it's going to, even if it's your written question or it's a question that comes to mind just with me talking, so that we're on that slide and I can be more descriptive or explain something better. Okay? All right. This is Jamie having supposedly learned screen share. Here we go. Come on. Present. All right, everybody got it? Thank you, Jane. We'll just assume everybody has it. So I don't think I had this slide last week, this specific slide, but we did talk a little bit about squinty eyes. And squinty eyes is a gesture that a dog will do in an attempt to soften its own facial expression to give a message to the person, or normally a person or a dog, but it could be towards a cat that it's scared of, to basically try and say that it's, you know, I want to be peaceful here. I don't want any confrontations. You could consider it a deferential behavior. But it's also a very soft behavior. So mostly we talked about soft eyes as being open and round, but when dogs do squinty eyes, they're attempting to make a soft facial expression and let the other dog know that they mean no harm. We talked briefly about the appeasement gesture with the paw. I added this slide. And so we've got a couple different situations. If you notice, this is Seamus. And if you notice, this is at UVM, because you can tell by the floor. So this right here, this paw, and you'll see it, I have it, you know, you can see 3 different examples of it. And they can vary in between there. You can also get a paw that's similar to this, but lifted straight up, or say take this and you make this part of the paw parallel, and then this part of the paw perpendicular. So you basically have like almost a 90-degree angle. And you can get it like this, which is similar here, but what's to note is you'll get appeasement gestures in a ton of different situations. So if you didn't look at this, all I would say is Seamus being cute. But here, for whatever reason, he is making that appeasement gesture. This dog is making an appeasement gesture out of fear, which you can tell if you look at the rest of its face. Even though, you know, we talked about different behaviors, its tail most likely would be a little curved up more in the pictures we saw last week. So its tail's starting to come down, but it's got its whole body hunched. This whole front end of its body is hunched. Its ears are back. Its mouth is clamped shut. And my guess is, in general, most people, even untrained professionals, anybody would probably hopefully anybody looking in that picture would say, this is a dog that's scared. So, you know, it makes sense. Okay, you're scared. You want to appease, in this case, I'm guessing the person that's scaring the dog. And up here, you've got a dog who's showing very frontal behaviors, so kind of leaning towards the Papillon. Its tail's coming out. I'm not positive what breed this is. It looks like it could be a Westie mix. Normal Westies have dock tails and they stick straight up. Come on, Lentil. Come on. Good boy. Oh, Caper, you're probably gonna have to get kicked out. Caper is a complete nuisance in my room, but we'll see. Lentil, on the other hand, is just normally in here. I'm gonna give him some, you can come here. Come on. All right, he's staying on the bed. So it's a little hard to read this tail because we don't know what normal is, but its ears sticking out like that, they look to me by the shape of the tips that they're probably prick ears. So the dog's sticking them out to the sides, it's giving some mixed emotions, but this is telling the Papillon, I can see you're scared because I can tell this Papillon's scared, except that it's also curious. All of it's showing fear, but it's not backing away. It's hunching down, it's got its tail down, it's got its ears back, but it wants to sniff the other dog. And face-to-face sniffing is a very normal greeting gesture. So my guess would be this is a situation where these two dogs are just, you know, they've been together for 15 to 30 seconds at the most. And this paw, this is an appeasement gesture telling the Papillon, I'm not a threat to you. So you get appeasement gestures in a variety of situations. They're not nearly as common as tongue flicks. So when I talked about tongue flicks, I talked about how once you start taking pictures of your dog or you start looking for it, you will unfortunately see tongue flicks all the time. I'm constantly looking at pictures going, why is he doing a tongue flick? Whereas when you're dealing with appeasement gestures, you can see them in a ton of different situations. And the tongue flicks we went over last week, I believe, yes? Thank you for the nods.
Yeah.
So any questions about this? Okay, you guys listen and see if you can hear Caper's at my side and he is clacking his jaw when he drops the toy because that's him being pushy. It's not a common behavior, but he does a bunch of less typical but very pushy behaviors. So we did the tongue flick, we did the commissures, this is the same picture. And remember, both this and this are signs of stress. Again, in a variety of situations, we don't know because we're not staring at the, we don't know what the situation is. So again, you'd have to see the cause. You see the effect, you'd have to know what the cause was to know why the dog's commissure started puffing up. Next, we move on to displacement behaviors. And had we been in class, we would have just automatically gone over these as we saw them occur in dogs in the class. And I'm pretty sure we've gone over some of them. Can anyone say yes, no?
Yeah.
We did shake off.
Yeah, the shaking we definitely talked about.
Thank you.
I'm not sure. I think we talked about yawns like briefly, but not really
We
in
did the
depth.
scratching neck area too a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. And so so these are 4 displacement behaviors, and displacing, what the dog is displacing is whatever emotion it was feeling prior to the displacement behavior. You'll most commonly see them after 2 dogs greet each other, or if 2 dogs getting in like a tussle over a toy, like who's going to get the toy. You'll often see a shake off. And after physical contact with your dog, it's not uncommon to see a shake off. Though the shake off and the scratching are the ones that are most obvious to see, but all 4 of these are behaviors that just say, I was stressed. In a sense, it's similar to a human going, because it's a similar behavior. And humans actually do also yawn after stressful situations. So yawning does occur in humans as well as a displacement behavior, although we tend to mostly use different ones. But and it's not a horrible thing. I mean, we all deal with moments of stress constantly. It's Caper's on the bed chewing an empty seltzer plastic bottle, and it's annoying. And so, I'm not stressed about it, but I easily could if he was getting more obnoxious, or now he's starting to like trying to shred my blanket. He was supposed to stay downstairs. Hang on, I'm just going to kick him out. One sec. Caper, come on. Can you call Caper and shut the gate? sorry, Caper can only be in my room when when I'm going to play with him or when I'm going to watch him very carefully, because he does not consider my room a place to sleep unless all the lights are out. Otherwise, he's just on the go, tossing, he's like throwing toys at me all the time, and then he starts pawing at me, and then he starts clacking his jaw, and then he starts shredding things. So I have tons of stuff he can shred, but after a couple hours, it can get annoying. So he's downstairs. So again, like, Caper could have just gone downstairs and done one of these displacement behaviors because he's frustrated that I just kicked him out of my room. That would not be atypical. When dogs here are learning the dog door, a lot of times once they've gone through it, they'll do a displacement behavior because it's a little bit stressful to have this thing you have to push your head through and then have it slide over their backs. I mean, we teach it very gently. So basically, as they're almost out the door, we'll just rest the flap on the very end of their body and then slowly let the flap go sooner and sooner. And then eventually, usually when a bunch of dogs are running out, a new dog will just follow everybody out and they learn it. Sniffing, a lot of times people will ask me, well, how do you know the dog wasn't just sniffing something interesting on the floor or the ground? And I think we may have talked about this in class, but it would have probably been briefly. With many things I've talked about, cause and effect. So if these two dogs have been in this yard for a while and they've been playing or they've been whatever, marking the area, sniffing, you know, just being dogs running around, and then suddenly, most likely they just had an interaction and they separate and they start sniffing, cause and effect. There's not, you know, when a dog's walked over a specific area numerous times, it's not the same thing as, you know, they're running through the woods, or, you know, you just cooked in the kitchen and they're sniffing around for scraps. So you'll see the sniffing. And again, remember, it's cause and effect. And people will say the same thing about scratching. Well, how do you know it didn't have an itch? Well, I know it didn't have an itch because I just petted on the top of its head. And as we know, dogs don't like being pet on the top of their heads. So these are dog displacement behaviors. Okay, I did this last week with mixed emotions. Humans have tons of displacement behaviors. And when I'm in class and I show this slide, instantly people will start doing them, you know, doing that or doing this or, you know, this. And I start pointing and I'm like, oh, look, right there, right there, right there. And we do it all the time without realizing it. What's worse is similar to the tongue flick, which, I mean, I'd rather stare at a dog and notice a tongue flick than stare at a human and notice them being stressed out. But if you're curious about it and you watch for it, you'll see people do it all the time. So that I just include that to, you know, remind you that there are, you know, much of the emotions that dogs have, we have as well. We just have to learn how to read them. But I'm guessing you can all recognize these as kind of a little bit stressed out, even if they're happy. Like this, I don't remember, is this some actor?
I think it's the guy from Twilight.
Yeah, and so like he's happy, but he's maybe embarrassed, or, you know, somebody said something that made him uncomfortable. So yes, I do this a lot because I need a haircut, but even if I had short hair, I would probably do it if I was stressed out. So we do get human displacement behaviors. Okay, so assertiveness, and this is where the whale eye comes in. Assertiveness can be seen in numerous situations. The next slide is going to be assertiveness with other dogs. And when this PowerPoint was first developed, it was all about dog-to-dog communication and body language, but it's usable with humans because they're saying the same thing regardless of who they're saying it to or what species. So if we start here with Winston, this is a friend's pity. He has two of them. You're seeing assertiveness in tail up, forward body motion, clearly very intent on here. He catches woodchucks in here. I think it's really unsafe and wish his owners would be more careful with the boards, but he goes in there all the time and he has caught them. So similar to lentil catching one in a different yard. So these are pictures of some pictures, particular with Winston. There is nothing worrisome about this assertiveness except to whatever is hiding under the wood. You also have his hackles up here a little bit. And so again, a little bit of mixed emotions. Maybe I know he's been quilled several times very badly by porcupines. So if he smelled a porcupine, it would make sense that he would have mixed emotions. His tail is always like down here and wagging like a whip, kind of like greyhound tails, but his ears are coming forward. And if you notice, this ear is flopping over because that's his ears are atypical, but even with his head tipped down, he's trying to make his ear go up. So this is a very mild assertive behavior that doesn't mean anything necessarily negative, except, like I said, potentially if there's a critter in there. And I did get asked questions for people who didn't attend the Zoom class, both about nose punches, and then I did get a question about whale eye, and I know you just asked one now, someone just asked one now. So very few people recognize nose punches as nose punches. And even if we do recognize them as such, we don't want to believe that's what our dog is doing, because if you pay attention, your dogs probably nose punch you on a frequent basis. And a little gentle poke, not a big deal. How do I know this dog isn't just sniffing her face? Look at the tilt of her head. When you go to kiss your dog, it's like, hang on. So when I kiss my dog, I'm like, boy, you are, I love you so much. But I don't tip my head away. So the reason she's tipping her head away is because that dog just went boink with its nose. And what would concern me in that is nose punching to the face can lead to biting in the face. Obviously, knowing nothing else, I wouldn't pass judgment or make a solid statement saying, ooh, that dog's about to bite that person. But it's hard to tell, but it does have frontal position and it is making physical contact. So nose punches are no different than if I poked you in the arm, or I slapped you in the arm, or I punched you in the arm. So if your dog is just gently nose punching you, you come home and it pokes at the back of your legs, or you're about to leave and it's poking you at the back of your legs. Yeah, it's being pushy. It's saying, I don't want you to leave, or why did you leave? And I was frustrated or anxious while you were gone, and so now I'm nose punching you because I want to, I'm expressing some type of anxiety or displeasure. But you do want to be aware of a nose punch, particularly if it's hard. So if you have a dog that nose punches you hard, that dog is telling you that it is about to bite you. And that doesn't mean it will bite you, but it is definitely a pre-bite behavior. So that's what nose punches are about. You'll get them in the face. Taya used to nose punch us constantly, mostly in the face. And she ended up, she went from there to biting us all the time, but she was also psychotic, and she couldn't learn to do other things because her brain just was not capable of it. And then we look at the whale eyes. So Lentil, like I was saying before, Lentil is either cute and adorable or demon dog. And he'll go from one to the other in seconds, either looking like it or acting like it. So I don't remember who asked the question about the whale eye and it being there all the time. I'd say 50% of the pictures of Lentil, you will see whale eye. I can tell, and I think you guys probably can tell, his overall facial expression does fit the whale eye in this picture. It reminds me when I showed you the picture of Caper last week and I said he was being very sassy. So this is a step past sassy. This is a dog saying, stop, knock it off, don't do what you're doing. I have absolutely no idea what I was doing. I can just tell you that was in my dining room and there's another person right there. But I have no idea why he's giving me that look. or necessarily, it could be just because I'm standing there with the camera. And you don't have necessarily a lot, his ears are up, and I have been watching his ears more. So his ears, particularly the one on this side, is back more. But in general, when he's happy and relaxed, his ears do, sorry, Lionel, it's like, screw you, Jamie. He just has these like front floppy ears, which you can see he's being very, do you see how he just pushed his head up and back?
Yeah.
So that's a very good example. I mean, he pushed his head away and he's like, knock it off. I don't like that. If I was playing fetch with him, he'd have these really cute floppy ears. But this one, clearly, even though it's hard to see his ears, he's pulling it back. And this one, he's pulling off to the side a little bit. So you've got a change in that. And can most of you tell that that's just a pretty disgusted look?
Yeah.
So you want to look, the only reason you want to look at the whale eye is, let's say I had been playing fetch with him. He used to resource guard his toys terribly. And I realized playing with him today is getting a lot worse. So I need to just work on it more, which I did. But he might do that over food. He might do that over, I don't know what. He does it all the time. Like I said, he goes from sweet to demon dog in a second. This picture here, so this is, there's a guy whose dogs I board, and he's always had rescue Rotties, and they all are females, and they all have been named Oval. So this, I believe, was Oval 4. He currently has Oval 6. And Oval boards with the little toy poodle Meg. So it's Hope, the mom, owns Meg, and then the son owns Oval, or the Oval. So again, if you look, you can tell I'm in class. And I can tell from the picture that I was completely randomly petting Oval. I wasn't even thinking about it. This dog has slept in my bed. She boarded 4 months, 2 years in a row. And I would never in a million years say that she would have ever bitten me. And I can tell just by my body that I'm bending over petting her and probably talking to a student. And when I saw the picture, I was like, no way, why is she giving me that look? And you've got a whale eye with a direct stare to my face. And that is a pre-bite behavior. That is a dog saying, I am about to bite you in the face. Now, clearly she didn't. And like I said, I was oblivious and had no idea until after I saw the picture. But if you're with a dog you don't know and you get that look, you want to stand up, and ideally, if you look down and you see that, you should immediately look away and back off. But again, like, looking at it, her mouth's clamped shut, her ears are pulled back, and she is staring me in the eyes, even if I'm not staring her in the eyes. So overall, whale eye does mean pre-bite, assertive behavior, but yes, some dogs do it, and if nothing else in their body says it, if you think about, going back to Pedigree Dogs Exposed and think about all the ways that our dogs are misshapen in their completely inappropriate ways, that will affect their communication, similar to when we talked about the smushed in face breeds or dogs with docked tails. It's no different. Dogs' eyes are shaped, many of them, they're much bigger and rounder, the neoteny we talked about. And so that's where you'll get this whale eye look, but it's a cause and effect. Any questions?
I actually,
Go ahead. You go ahead, Julia.
I was just, so kind of going off of that, like, is there a difference between like what they classify as like puppy dog eyes or like whale eyes? Because like I've seen like young dogs, like especially if they like look up at you like that, it's seen more as like, oh, puppy, like, but is that just like a sign of whale eye?
Well, I know plenty of puppies that have resource guarded and will give you a whale eye when they're resource guarding. Or if you're doing body handling and the puppy's not used to it yet, so you're doing too much, you're covering too much of the body area, you might get a whale eye from the way you touch it. You might get a whale eye around its food bowl. So there's a lot of situations because life human life is so new to that puppy that you could see it. But if, again, if everything else about that puppy is playful, it wouldn't worry me. And I would think more about, okay, I'm seeing this a lot as a puppy. And I'd look and see, am I seeing other warning signs of potentially assertive behaviors that I want to fix? And if I'm not, then I don't worry about it. Does that make sense? Someone else had a question?
Yeah, I do. So I don't know what this behavior technically would indicate, but I have this dog. His name is Kaiser. He was like a rescue, and he started out super like afraid of basically everything and everyone. And he used to like nip at people, but after he turned like 6, he became like very mellow and so snuggly. Like he literally lies on top of us, this 90-pound dog. And he does this thing when he's really excited, or he'll be begging, and sometimes he does this, but like it kind of varies depending, like, yeah, it definitely varies the context. But he'll like come at you with just his little baby front teeth and just kind of like nip you, but not like hard. Like, yeah, like we call it what's nibbling. I feel like, yeah. So
Okay,
yeah.
so 2 things. One, let's try to stick to general questions. And if you have my dog questions, you're welcome to stay on the Zoom conference and ask them afterwards. So certain breeds, pinchers in particular, the expression comes from that motion. This is pinching. And if it's in a breed that is genetically designed to do that behavior, then it does not mean anything beyond that's its genetic behavior. Obviously, if it's doing it hard or it's grabbing your skin, you're still going to want to teach the dog not to. But a lot of dogs will nibble on their owners, and it's not, as long as it's very gentle, it's not anything that would concern me. I will say that dogs will sometimes nose punch you with their teeth. So it's like a teeth punch, but you'll feel their teeth hit you and not necessarily their lips or their nose. That would be a problem. But a dog that's like basically barely touching your skin,
Yeah.
like doing this as opposed to this. So as soon as you start to get any grabbing, that's a dog biting you. It's not nibbling anymore, unless it's a puppy. And of course, puppies' skin is like the perfect temperature, the perfect pliability, the perfect texture for chewing. You can't find a chew toy better. And it's one of the reasons puppies do bite on us so much, also because we're interacting with them with our hands. So I don't worry too much about the kind of nibbling behavior. A lot of pinchers will do it to themselves. And as long as you're careful to watch, particularly in Dobermans, you're watching that it isn't doing it at its flank, because Dobermans have a behavioral disorder, an obsessive compulsive behavioral disorder called flank sucking. And it will often begin with nibbling, and their flank sucking, basically where my right hand is here, this is what they refer to as the flank. And you'll see Dobies turn their heads and start sucking. It's similar to cribbing in horses, but with dogs, it can become a very serious and potentially harmful behavior, because the dogs, I think it is with horses too, they suck in a lot of air. So you would want to just be careful if it's just doing these little, a lot of dogs do that when they're excited, happy, excited, and I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any more on this?
I had a question about nose punches. If the dog is like nose punching you, does it matter like where it's nose punching you, like the face, like in your butt, like
yes, so
your like arms,
in general,
like is there significance to where, or is it just kind of random?
No, in general, one, it could be if I pick up lentil or I kneel down so that I'm at face level with my dogs, then they're more likely to nose punch me in the face if they're going to nose punch. But remember how I talk a lot about how dogs in general don't love having their heads pet. They do like their ears, but in general, they don't necessarily like much other. Some dogs really like being pet here, but it's very specific. So if some of it can be based on your position in relationship to the dog. So if my back is to a dog and it's tall enough and it nose punches me in the butt, it's saying, hey, I'm going to bite you in the butt if you don't move. This dog is going to bite her in the face because that's where it's nose punching. Oval's not nose punching, but if I bent over, she would hopefully nose punch me before she bit me. So when they do the whale eye, or a dog is staring at you with other pre-bite expressions, or like it nose punches you as high as it can, it can often indicate that it will jump up and bite you in the face if that nose punch is a pre-bite behavior. But a lot of times, like Caper nose punches for attention all the time, and he nose punches my calves because they're nose height, basically. He could jump up and nose punch my back, but it's more correlated to where the dog's face is in relationship to your body.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Which is why I learned many, many years ago that I always say I don't allow, at consults, I always say I don't allow face kisses on the first date. And that's because it's a very polite way to not insult an owner and make a joke out of it. But I don't let dogs' faces near my face unless I know them really well, because early on, even sometimes dogs will bite you with no warning, or no visible warning, or I didn't see the warning. And especially if you're face to face with a dog, you can't really read a lot of its body language. So I just recommend professionally you stay away from the face. If any of you are vet techs, it's why you hold the dog around the neck and you can kind of turn its head away. So the human's face is at the neck, and then from the neck forward is being held in a position that that dog can't turn its head towards the vet or the vet tech and bite. Other questions? Okay, so these are pictures mostly with assertiveness towards other dogs, but again, the body language would be no different if it was with a human. So I started with this picture because it's a very gentle, playful position with assertiveness. So in a sense, partially mixed emotions, but Caper is probably about 3 months old here. Hank is an Australian Shepherd that I boarded some. I did a lot of work with the owners. He is one of the only dogs that, upon meeting him, like within probably 20 minutes, I was so in love with this dog. It was actually before I even had Caper, that I said to the woman, if you can't ever keep him, I want him. Which fortunately she wouldn't give him up. But she said to me, well, actually, I thought several times about giving him up. And after I got to know him, I was like, oh my God, I should never have said that. That was so stupid, because the dog has so many serious issues. And I would have adopted him because he is a really cool dog, but she's keeping him, which is good. But you can tell his assertiveness. Again, black dogs, hard to read their eyes, but his eyes are beady. And he's making direct eye contact with Caper, even though Caper's head is tilted down. He's got him enclosed with his paws. So by that frontal gesture, Caper is against a wall. Hank is kind of holding him in place there. He's got his head pulled back a little bit, which is in part a play gesture, but he's got his ears pulled back, his mouth clamped shut, his nose ready to punch at Caper. So he's saying I can tell there's excitement, like Hank kind of wants to play, but he's also being very assertive in his communications with Caper, who's basically just laying there being a puppy going, all right, I won't move. I'll let you take the next move and go from there. And as adults, they did play with each other. Hank hasn't boarded for a while. So in these pictures, you've seen several pictures of Yoda last class, and I'm going in not in order of the pictures because I'm going in order of the body language. So here, again, assertiveness that is not nearly as scary as this or this. But you've got, and we saw some of this last week, you've got that frontal leaning towards Yoda. Her tail's coming back up, her ears are pulled back, her eyes are getting, her pupils are dilating, and she's very forward at Yoda. Yoda, again, looks like he's looking for a treat, and he is looking right at the shelf that was in this training center where I kept the treats, which further makes me think that's what he's staring at. Like, oh, can I have another treat, please? I'm not fat enough. But Penny is telling him, no, don't move. And that's being assertive. She's telling him to stay in place. Years ago, the Humane Society got a bitch in, and I don't remember which of the two breeds these mixes were, but the majority of the people who worked at the Humane Society adopted the puppies because they were all Chow Akita mixes. Several of them were euthanized prior to a year of life. This is Ezra, and I don't know if she lived out her life naturally or not to old age, but I know there's got to be a dog against the wall right there. But you can see she's got the whale eye on this side of her eye. It's probably underneath her eyeball as well. Mouth clamped shut, very forward leaning. You can see, like, if we talk about that box, you've got some straightness here, but as you come up, all of this part of her body is out of that box, and her back legs, if we were to draw a straight line down, she's pushing forward, and partly her legs are back, most likely because it's giving her more power to lean the rest of her body forward. They had semi-curly tails, but not that curly. And then you've got all these hackles up, but this is just like a death stare. And even though the neck isn't bent, as in this case, it's probably because her nose is where she wants it on this dog. And this is just a very intense, assertive position that still allows the other dog to get away, as do these other two pictures. Here, you've got some size issue, obviously, but you look at that extension of her neck, and in this case, this is not an appeasement gesture. This is her moving in forward and asserting herself, pushing her body in, kind of like I said, how Ezra's back legs are there because they're giving her balance to push forward and to assert more pressure on the front of her body. That's just, this to me looks like the shepherd went racing over to Wyatt, and Wyatt froze in place, and he is standing very still because he knows if his next move would get him bitten. Do you see a situation like this? There's very little you can do, because if you move in to try and intervene, you will cause a fight. And so the only thing you can do is try and distract the dogs. And you could do something like throw, these are stones right here. You could throw some stones against the wall here, the side of the house. And I wouldn't necessarily do it over their heads. I might try and do it, there's a doorway right about here. I might try and do it on the other side of the door, or I might pick up a hand of the stones and drop them on the ground just to distract the dogs long enough to pick Wyatt up. But you've just got, her, even though she has prick ears, they're coming way forward. This is just a classic picture of, if you freaking move, I am going to kill you. Obviously not a situation I would have allowed to happen if I thought it would get out of control like that. Wyatt did not get injured, but I will show you another picture of them where, had I not gotten him out of the yard, he would have probably been severely injured, if not worse. Any questions? Okay. Here are a lot of pictures of fear behaviors. So this shepherd is the same one we just saw. This is all still assertive, but if you notice, like, its ears are up more, if we go back, can you see how they're leaning forward versus here they're standing up? So that's just a good shot of differentiation. Kismet, again, this is not an appeasement gesture. This is Kismet turning to walk away. He's got whale eye, but fear can also cause biting. So you don't just get whale eye when a dog is being assertively assertive or assertively aggressive. You'll get whale eye. You can also get it. It can be a pre-bite behavior, but the dog is so scared that it's all in its mind. If the situation doesn't change, its only next option is to bite. So he's got his head turned away, he's got his ears back, he's got his tail lifted up, which could be a leftover from a previous shot. Like if I took a shot a second later, his tail might be starting to come down. Excuse me. But this is a good example. I talked some about this last week, where you're looking at the overall picture. So even if his tail's up over his back on purpose, the rest of his body is just all fear. And so his goal would be to move away from the dog or dogs that are here. It looks like that's the head of one dog and that's the back end of another, but I'm not positive. And again, this is a situation where Wyatt can't move away. And he's kind of standing his ground and he's not turning away, because even the motion of turning could get him bitten. But in this situation, Kismet is moving away and most likely continued to do so. Here is just a good picture of, these guys are staring at the exact same thing. They also live together. And of all the dogs I know in the video, I cannot remember their names. Even though this is in my yard. This is in my house, this is my yard, this is my Richmond training center. But here, again, you can see a general overall picture of fear. Do you guys see the bar that comes up every time I move the mouse? The black bar? Yes, no, Jane?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I'll try not to move the pointer. So if you look at the blacker shepherd,
Yeah.
you can tell how sloped down her body is. That front right leg may or may not be an appeasement gesture. We can't see the rest of it, but her whole body doesn't look like she wants to move forward. It looks more like she wants to step back or retreat or turn away. And for whatever reason she's not, I don't know. But she's got clamped mouth. Remember, the clamped mouth means I am no longer relaxed. It doesn't mean I want to bite you or I'm feeling assertive or I'm yielding. It means I'm not relaxed. I'm starting to get reactive. But everything we see in her, you can't even see that back ear. It's so flattened against her head. And you can see the puffiness here. You can see the commissures here. And you can see some puffiness here. Again, this is the only area, this area is the area of the commissure, but the puffiness that you get, the folds, is the same type of behavior. It's stress. Or it can be appeasement if it is attached to the squinty eyes or certain other behaviors. But you can also see like this tail, very assertive. But this dog is terrified. This dog is the most scared dog we've seen so far, but like pretty much all you can see is white. You can't even see the rest of that dog's eyes. It's baring its teeth. It's probably got saliva spitting out of its mouth. And again, fear biting. I'd rather get bitten by a dog that's scared than a dog that's very assertive, because fear bites are not as usually are not as harmful as assertive bites. So if a dog is being fearful, it's going to come in, bite, and retreat. Come in, bite, and retreat. A dog that's being assertive and biting is going to bite, or bite and hold on. So that's what makes the fear bites not as severe injury. They don't cause as much injury. Here, so this is trout. This is an Appenzeller. There's another picture where you'll be able to see two of them, and you'll see a little more of the body. And you look at Tucker here. Tucker is absolutely neutral in his body language. His mouth is shut because he looks like this is a gate here. Oh no, the gate is right here. And my guess, and the latch is here. And my guess is that Trout just got put in the yard and her instant reaction was fear. And with her, we've got some wrinkled nose, which you saw in the line drawings. We didn't see it so much as we talked about it. She's baring her teeth a little with her mouth clamped shut. She's got her ears plastered back, very snarly kind of face, but also a fearful expression. In this picture, I wouldn't count the Appenzeller. And my guess, they knew each other really well and they never had any problems. There were probably a lot of dogs in the yard at this point. Trout often had dog-dog issues, nothing severe, but she's a very, what I would have said, dominant female at the time. And she could be very snarky, but here she's just scared. And she's not leaning in any way toward Tucker, which is part of why I don't think she's afraid of him. He's also so neutral that I don't think she's afraid of him. And she's leaning away. But again, I'm guessing it's more what's going on that we can't see, especially because it's clear that the Appenzeller's staring at something. And she's got her ear forward a little bit, mouth shut, and a very direct posture towards whatever she's looking at. Any questions? So here we get into yielding behaviors. Here's more of an Appenzeller, and the woman taking these pictures actually owns the two Appenzellers that are in the pictures. And there's Yoda yet again, probably standing in the same spot because he didn't move very much because he was a bulldog. Do you remember the picture of the Border Collie and the Golden last week with this puppy Trooper in the background? Thank you, Nicole. If others of you nodded, I can only see two students and myself in the pictures right now. So this Golden is basically doing all the same things, but she is completely turning her head away, even though this puppy is younger than her. He looks like he's trying to mount her, which is just an assertive behavior. It's not a sexual behavior, but she's yielding completely to him. Everything in her body, she's trying to get away. She is on her side as opposed to in the previous picture where she was mostly yielding. She was flat on her belly. Here she's exposing her belly. And I think especially right here is Trooper's front right leg. So it's possible that she wanted to flip on her back, but physically couldn't because his right legs are holding her there. But still, this is all yielding, trying to be very deferential, trying to get away. And deference and yielding, I use interchangeably. This is Jenny, who you've seen before. This is Turtle, who lives with or lived with a lot of the dogs you're seeing. And Turtle is giving what's very close to a ritualized greeting behavior. It's called a T position, where one dog is standing this way, this being the head, and the other dog's head is at this dog's groin. And Turtle's a little bit forward for the groin. She's more up at the shoulder, but it's still a very common greeting behavior. And while Turtle's not showing a lot of assertiveness, like excessive assertiveness, she is clearly standing her ground, holding her face, clamping her mouth shut, forward motion, and Jenny's trying to get away. Again, hard to tell if this is an appeasement gesture or she's trying to move. You look at the position of this leg, it easily could be that she's turning away, but it's such a classic hold of an appeasement gesture. It's like the exact position that you will see in many situations. She's got her ears pulled back. She's got her head down, clearly not choosing to look at all at Turtle, lowering her body. And we talk about that box. If we could see her better, the box should be up here. Her back should not be down low like that if she were in a relaxed position. We have a very similar situation here going on with the turning away. I don't think she's showing the whites of her eyes, but her pupils are very large, which is common with fear behavior. Her ears are normally flat. Appenzellers have floppy ears. So she's doing some funky stuff, trying to pull her ears back. She got her hackles raised. So again, fear. And here, this is yet again Penny Lou and my dog Grace, who desperately looks like she needs grooming. And Penny is being very yielding to the point of a fair amount of submission. One thing to note is this paw is trying to push Grace away. So all of, see her ears are back. She's not looking at Grace. She's basically looking upwards, slightly turned away. She's allowing this as opposed to getting up and moving away. Same thing, this Golden is not trying to get up and get away. Grace has got her tail coming up. So this is just another position of a yielding behavior on the back that's different than this. And again, this is the one thing that Penny's doing to say, back off, just like a human would, back off. Questions? Okay. I hope you all have that expression memorized in your heads, that dogs neither expect nor thrive in a democracy. And these are the same two German Shepherds, and you've got just a classic assertive, yielding. And this dog, my guess is that he just peed, and he's scratching. And if you guys don't know, dogs have sweat pads in their feet, so that expresses scent, as well as the reason dogs kick back like that is to spread their scent, which is marking more territory than if they just pee in one spot. Questions? Okay, classic aggression. Classic aggression. And all of these are from online. This one is kind of like over the top, but when you get a dog with its teeth bared and its eyes are hard to see, but it's got a direct stare, this dog is semi between assertive and yielding. This dog, very scared, ears pulled back, lots of puffiness here, lots of folds here, commissure showing. Saliva is much more common in fear aggression than in assertive aggression. Most likely because of the amount of reflection, or pupils are really big, or his pupils are really big. So again, this dog is just as likely to bite as this dog, but this one's doing it out of fear. These two are definitely assertive. This is a Dogo Argentina. If you haven't seen them, they're getting popular. And I would suggest you only get one if you want a very, very, very serious biting guard dog that will be very difficult to control. This is Xena, the same shepherd from here. So what happened was we distracted them, and I grabbed Wyatt and threw him in the driveway. There's a gate about 6 feet to the right of her. There's chain link. She's right at the chain link, and she is, I think there's one more. Oh, there you go, down here. So she's at the chain link, and Wyatt is on the other side of that chain link. And that was because I knew he was about to get killed or severely injured. And if for no other reason, the size difference would cause that type, would potentially cause a fair amount of injury. But again, even though she's all crouched down, it's because Wyatt's only this tall. If Wyatt's head was up here, her head would be up here. So she's just, I will never forget that chain of events, because obviously if I knew she would be that aggressive, she wouldn't have been in any of the pictures, maybe just with her housemate dog. But this is just flat out, this dog is definitely gonna bite, and she did attack the chain link a whole bunch. Here's Ezra again, far less assertive than before, but still staring at another dog. You've got the big whale eye. This is not turning away, this is turning in, even though this leg looks more like it's turning away. These two back legs are turning in. Very intense, hard stare. And this is just a conglomeration of dogs with a whole lot going on. So these are the two Appenzellers, and they do have naturally curly tails. I think I said they didn't, but they do. They have curly tail. No, they don't have curly tails. Yes, they do have curly tails, and Ontelbukes look identical but have docked tails. This dog is going in for the kill, but these guys were very, very assertive. I worked a lot with their owner. That's how I originally met her, was because they were aggressive with other dogs. And so here you've just got a situation where this dog wants to go in for the kill, so to speak, but it's got all these other dogs there that are intimidating enough to keep this dog where it was. There was no fight that took place. You've got this forward-leaning behavior. This mouth is open, and it's a little hard to say because we can't really read much of her face, but my guess is her mouth is open in the same way that his mouth is open, more like I'm gonna bite you than I'm going, I'm relaxed. And there's a lot of tension around the face here. And even though Grace is that far away, if this dog is cognizant of Grace, she's got her mouth open, so she's clearly not worried about the situation, and her ears aren't doing it. She's actually being pretty relaxed, especially for her. Wizard is showing some yielding behaviors by her ears being back. Her mouth is shut, but I can tell she's looking in the distance. She's avoiding all three of these dogs. Both of them pretty much are. But this is just like, okay, too many dogs in the yard. Let's grab these dogs and get them out of here. Questions? And here's just a pretty happy picture at the end. So that is the end of the PowerPoint. And now we'll go through you guys asking your questions.
I have a question. I wasn't sure if it was going to come up in the PowerPoint or not, but you had mentioned something about pawing when it came to Caper and the Aussie. And I have seen like other dogs do this too when like playing or just like curiosity, but I wasn't sure if it was like out of context they do that or if it could be and any like behavior. Is it like a certain behavior that they do it for, or is it just because they're trying to get attention, or just in context?
Most dogs paw when they want something.
Okay.
And if they're pawing hard, then they're being very, very, if the paw gets harder and harder, they're being assertive about it.
Okay.
But it usually is, they want your attention, they want you to throw a toy, they want you to feed them dinner. You just walked in the door, they want you to pet them, but it is a attention-getting behavior.
So even with it's like when it's with other dogs, it would be the same as well?
Again, it can depend on, sorry, I'm trying to get this to stop wobbling. Again, it can depend on the situation, but yeah, it usually means it wants some interaction from that dog, or it wants the toy the dog has. So again, similar to what it would mean with a human, just different situation.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Jane, do we
I have a question. I have a question.
Okay, from there, Jane, do we want to go in order or just do it this way? I can't hear you, your mute's on.
Sorry. We can go in order after that.
Okay, Nick, go ahead, and then we'll come up to the top left with just Julia. Go for it.
So does tail interactions differ with a curled tail?
Yeah, if you watched the video from last week, anytime a dog has a body part that has been manipulated from the norm, so a curly tail, a dock tail, no tail, it can, with curly tails, say like a pug, they can unfurl them. But that's about all that they can do. So anytime you have, you look at a wolf, and anytime you have a dog that isn't in that shape, excluding the floppy ears that wolves don't have, that body part cannot express correct emotion, and another dog cannot read the dog and recognize, oh, you have a docked tail, that's why you're not tucking it, or that's why you're not putting it up in the air. And so as humans, when we read dogs, we can look at them and say, okay, I'm just going to leave the tail out of my equation of what this dog is saying. But another dog, and it is a huge cause for miscommunication between dogs.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Julia, I know you asked a question at some point. Do you have another question?
Yeah, kind of.
Go for it.
It's more about like littermate interaction. So if you see like littermates playing and they are exhibiting these aggressive behaviors, is that like, or assertive behaviors, is that like true aggression, or is that just like them learning like inter-dog, I guess, communication? Because like,
Yeah, let me answer that and then see if it answers what you're asking.
yeah.
So basically, in most litter situations, which means no human intervening in the play, the puppy has been allowed to whelp the puppies and nurse at will. Certain breeds, the breeders will actually take the bitch out of the pen and only let them into nurse, which will totally screw up the puppy development. But in the average owner who lets, it is appropriate after 2 weeks to let the bitch out away from the puppy for periods of time, that's fine. But in general, littermates left alone to interact with each other will show the entire range of behavior, from the most submissive they can be to being assertive, not like nonstop, but you'll see a puppy like, grab another puppy or pin it down and push it down by the neck. And that's a good thing, because those puppies with their litter mates are the most important time for them to learn how to communicate with other dogs. And so you want that huge range. So if a dog is being very assertive, even to the point of aggression, we want that other puppy to recognize that and show yielding behaviors, right? And if two dogs are being assertive, we want them to figure out how to end that dispute. The leading cause of dog-dog aggression currently in our society is human intervention. And I'm not going to talk a ton about that because it's beyond the context of this course, but leaving dogs alone to interact is the best thing you can do, and especially when they're with their litter. Did that get all of it, or did I miss some?
No, that was perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a related question to that, actually.
Go for it.
So obviously you want to do your best to let dogs interact to the best of their abilities, but when you do have to intervene to stop aggression, like what's really the best way to do that, other than, I guess, trying to distract them the best you can?
Okay, so first of all, one of the things that I tell every single employee and every single intern that I have is never break up a dog fight. If you break up a dog fight, you will get injured and the dogs will not. And that is true 99.8% of the time. And it becomes very obvious when you do need to break up a fight, because it usually, most of the time, the dogs stop moving. So they're frozen in place in this very aggressive position, or one dog stops moving and the other dog's thrashing it. So again, we break up communications that are not worrisome. You can see like what we call dog fights, that they're not really fights. The dogs are having a spat or a dispute, and just because they're going and their teeth are showing or they're grabbing each other, it's a dog's way of having an argument with someone, with another dog. It's no different than if you get in a fight with a family member or a best friend. Dogs should have those type of disputes. It's normal. It's normal, especially with dogs that live together. And like I said, almost everything we see is communication and not aggression. And so breaking up a fight is usually going to increase the likelihood of aggression. And I can tell you, the only person that has ever broken up a fight correctly, because I do show my employees how to do it, is Mihaela, who has been working with me for 5 or more years, and about a month ago broke up a dog fight for the first time because she listened to what I said and she never broke up a fight. Every employee I've had other than her has at some point broken up a fight, gotten bitten, and the dogs were fine. And fine means they might have like a little puncture wound, you know, they might have a bite in the ear, but to me that's no different than my family motto used to be, if you play hard, you get injured. You know, if you go running, you might twist your ankle. If you play volleyball, you know, you might dislocate your shoulder. If you play, you know, whatever you do, if we're being active, we're apt to injure ourselves. And so when dogs have disputes, it's normal and it's best left alone because, like I said, human intervention is the biggest cause for making dogs aggressive. If you do need to break up a fight, this is really hard to show without a dog, but if you do need to break up a fight, you want to take your hands and put them on the, I don't have a dog in the room anymore, Lentil left, and put them on the inside. So my palms would be on the inside of the back legs and my thumbs on the outside of the thighs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then what you want to do is lift and spin as quickly as you can. So you grab the dog, lift up as high as you can, and spin around at the same time. You do this to break up a dog fight, you're going to get bitten, and those dogs are going to be fine. I had one situation, I've been boarding dogs as of next month for 26 years. I had a woman come for an intro, and her dog pinned Cooper and had him by the side of his face, and neither of them were moving, but I could tell that the dog on top was adding increasing pressure, and the owner was trying to pry its mouth open, and I said, stop, you're going to severely injure your hand. And I went running into the room behind me. Have you heard of bitter apple?
Yeah.
Or bitter orange? It's like this really nasty tasting stuff. You can use hot sauce. And I grabbed it and I like poured it in it was actually a pit bull, which I wasn't going to say because it sounds like doing breed bias, but it's just easier because I don't remember her name. And I had bitter apple and I took the lid off and I poured it in her mouth, and the pity instantly let go and we were able to separate the dogs. But that is a situation where even if I had nothing else, I would have done everything I could to break up that fight. Unfortunately, the woman did end up with several injuries to her hand and needed stitches. But like I said, in 26 years, that's the worst situation I've ever seen. And I think the worst thing that would have happened was that Cooper might have needed stitches. I don't think she would have ripped his ears off. I think he might have ended up with a bunch of stitches and some drains, which sucks and is horrible. But again, it wasn't like either of the dogs were going to die. And in the long run, in gathering more information about the dog had injured other dogs and the woman didn't tell me. But I found out because she had listed other places she had boarded the dogs. And this woman still wanted to try after I said no, but I also wanted to assess my liability. And at that point, Cooper wasn't ours, but I think it was like one of his like 4-month stays. So I knew he'd be totally healed by the time he went home. But I do have to consider liability. And so I did track down some other people that she had gone to find out, had this ever occurred before, or was it just on my watch? But again, in general, as hard as it is to do, you just leave the dogs alone. And if the argument doesn't stop, or like I said, the dogs are not moving and one's clamped down on the other, you can still try and do like with that. In that case, I didn't think it would work, but if I wanted to, which is why I went and got the bitter apple, but I still would have tried that in the thighs, picking up the pity and trying to whip her around. The risk, especially with collar pulls, and in that specific situation, the same thing would have happened even if I did it correctly, When you pull two dogs apart, you tend to cause more injuries because instead of just like a clean puncture wound, you get tears. And it's the same thing that happens to your hands. Okay, Jane, where are we?
We are on Caitlin. Do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So what is the best way to like combat an over assertive dog with another dog?
So it really depends on the situation. And I don't know if you're signed up for canine behavior or not, but we do get into a lot about dog to dog behavior and aggression. So the first thing is you have to assess the level of behavior. In my book, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but in my book, I break dogs into 3 categories. Spirited dogs, which I refer to as dog park dogs, which are dogs that get along with anyone. Spirited dogs, and spirited dogs are dogs that often have issues upon greeting, but then are fine. And the reason for that is because when they tried to greet another dog, they kept being told they were doing, the humans were like, oh, don't mount, or don't put your paw on the top of my dog's back, or don't. And that's where you get these dogs. They're like, okay, you've taken away my ability to do every polite greeting behavior. So the only way I can greet a dog is very excessive assertiveness. But spirited dogs, most of the time, if you can find safe other spirited dogs or owners who are willing to, that aren't going to get stressed out in those first 30 seconds where it looks horrible, those dogs usually can be rehabilitated, or what I call resocialized, by being allowed to have repeated interactions with different dogs. And the safest way to do it is to have either ideally like a fence between them, or a gate. Sometimes I'll do double gates, like a gate at the bottom and then a pressure gate above it, so you can do it in the house. Storm doors, if they have glass all the way to the bottom, are also very good, effective way to do it. If it's screen, then I just put a baby gate at the bottom so that they don't rush the screen. And you allow them to do their initial greeting that way. And if you have a dog that is seriously aggressive with other dogs, and the likelihood is it's not able to be rehabilitated, then we come up with what's called a treatment and management plan to work on decreasing the dog's reactivity, which also makes the dog feel better, as well as teaching it manner training, like so that if you're walking down a sidewalk, or you're walking in a park and your dog's on leash, it's not going to flip out at the end of the leash and it can walk by other dogs. You're using your obedience to override what could be an aggressive behavior. It's a short overview. I know. If you're not, are you graduating this semester?
No, I'm a sophomore.
Okay, well, either if you take CB, you'll learn a lot more about it. And I'm not pushing that you should buy my book, but you can usually get it on Amazon for like a couple dollars because it's out of print. And if you're dealing with a dog, that's going to be like the fastest, cheapest way to get a ton of information, because the whole book is about dog-to-dog communication.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
and
thank you.
If your dog is up here, then I can work with you and your dog and help you more directly.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yep. Are we on you, Maddie?
Yeah. For displacement behaviors, would it be more of a one and done kind of thing, or like would you ever see multiple shakeoffs in a row, and like what would that mean for the dog?
Most of the time it's a singular behavior, but if the dog is put back in the situation, so let's say I bring 2 dogs to class that don't know each other, and they're trying to get to know each other, but both of them are uncomfortable with each other, they will most likely continue to try and get to know each other, and every time they break apart, they'll probably show a displacement behavior. Most dogs will greet, and the greeting will last 30 to 60 seconds, the initial greeting, and then they'll break apart, do displacement behaviors, stay apart for 30 to 60 seconds, come back, do a second greeting that usually lasts 15 or 20 seconds, separate, do displacement behaviors, and then decide to either ignore each other or to play with each other. But let's say, you're at the vet's office and the vet is handling the dog in a variety of ways on the floor, which more and more vets do, as opposed to on a table where it's not gonna shake off because it's gonna fall off. So you might see, the dog gets a physical examination and is let loose and it shakes off. And then the dog gets an injection and you're gonna see another displacement behavior. So in that situation, you'd see repeated displacement behaviors. If you had several people coming into the house and petting the dog one at a time, you would most likely see a displacement behavior after each person, but then not again for the rest of the time they're there, unless a person interacts with the dog in the way they didn't like.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Malin?
Yeah. I guess my question is, if you're dealing with a dog that has had a traumatic past, what's the best way, or like what are some clear signs that the dog is about to be triggered or could be triggered?
Well, if you don't know what the trauma is, and again, this is like way beyond the context of this course, but what I would do is first, I'd want to get a really good understanding of what is normal, my dog's most relaxed body language position. And then I'm going to look for things that might only slightly trigger it. So let's say the dog is mildly sound sensitive, or the dog gets a little bit nervous when a family member comes home. I'm going to look for those mild changes in its body language. And then as when you see your dog be very reactive, like some of the pictures I showed, clearly those are triggers that are causing far more reactivity than more mild things. So if I'm answering your question correctly, bigger triggers will cause bigger changes in body language. And if you're not sure what those triggers are, you're going to learn them by, all of a sudden you're walking your dog and it starts cowering and its ears are back, and it's because a giant truck just went down the road. So it's like loud on the pavement and stuff. Or suddenly, a group of kids come out of the house and they're dancing and screaming and yelling out of happiness. If your dog shows a massive change in body language, now that's a trigger for your dog. In terms of treating that, again, way beyond anything I could begin. I mean, we spend like half of canine behavior on how do you treat dogs that have behavior issues. So I can't really get into the fixing of it, but you can gauge how triggering a stimuli is on how your dog responds to it, both in the moment and afterwards. So kind of asking like, are you going to see displacement behaviors over and over and over again? Not likely, but if your dog is really triggered and the trigger goes by, you might see all the displacement behaviors in a row. Or the dog yawning while it's scratching, that kind of thing. Does that at least come close to some answers?
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jackie, did you want to go next?
Yeah. So my dog sometimes will do whale eye at me when like she wants to eat.
Can you speak a little louder or get closer to your computer?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Thanks.
So my dog sometimes does whale eye at me if she like wants food from me, like either at the table or when I'm about to feed her. Like, what is that trying to accomplish on her part?
Okay, remember, we're going to try and minimize my dog's stories. But
Okay.
again, in that, it reminds me of Lentil. Lentil shows me whale eye all the time. And so it could be your dog saying, you're not feeding me fast enough, especially if you periodically feed from the table. You're not constantly feeding. So then the dog's looking at you and saying, giving you a disgusted look and saying, you're continuing to eat that grilled cheese sandwich and you're giving me little tiny tidbits, and that sucks. I want more. So it would, be something like that. It kind of, in my mind, I'd look at that more as pawing at you. I want more, I'm pawing at you. And a lot of dogs will show a variety of more assertive behaviors when you're prepping their food and when they're eating. for the same reason. They're like, can you do it faster? And can you put it down now? Why wasn't it ready an hour ago? And so they're giving you, like with Wyatt, like the disgusted look.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Caroline, do you want to go next?
Sure. So my question, I think you said that saliva tends to be more like a fear aggression-based behavior. Is there a reason why that is?
It's a really good question, and I'll have to look into it. You can see it in dogs that are assertively aggressive. My guess is it's an actual physical reaction that goes with all the hormonal changes that happen and chemical changes that happen when a dog gets into an activated state. So along with all those chemicals that are changing, something must trigger the saliva, but you've now challenged me because I will try and figure out. I don't know the actual reason why, but I'll look for it.
Thank you.
Hang on one sec. I'm just gonna write it down. Well, next person can ask if they want while I'm writing.
Catherine, did you want to go next?
Yeah. When a dog uses the bathroom and then like scratches the ground to make their territory bigger, is that like particular to males, or does it happen equally in males and females?
It's far more common in males. They'll also, like if you have a dog that lifts its leg, you might notice it like trying to lift it as high as it can. And that's because in the wild, the higher the canid can pee, the bigger they are. And therefore the likelihood is that they will have more strength behind them in a situation where they're showing assertiveness. You do get female dogs that urinate, and they tend to be female dogs that are on the assertive side with other dogs. So that'll happen. And you'll also get male dogs that never lift their legs. And those are dogs that tend to be more deferential to other dogs.
That's really interesting. Okay, sorry, I didn't know that. That's really cool.
Didn't you know?
Why some males do and don't lift their legs, and why some females do and don't. Because Percy doesn't lift his leg, but he's like a very submissive dog when it comes to other dogs. So it's just
and so you'll see that, and then you'll also see like a Cooper always squats to pee, but will always go where another dog is peed and lift his leg and pee on top of it. So there you're getting on his own. He's a very relatively, I mean, I'd even use the word submissive dog, but he also shows assertiveness by peeing on top of everybody else. And unfortunately, he often pees on Lentil's head.
Percy, come here. I know you want to come in.
Okay, I've lost track of where we are.
Yeah, I know where we are. John, did you want to go next?
Come
on. Sure. Now you have me thinking of the pee thing, which was not my question. I shared a video of a dog petting another dog in the chat. Just wondering what your interpretation of that behavior is.
I didn't see it, so okay. I will look for it and I can write you a reply. But if you want to describe it a little bit, or if you can screen share it, we can watch it together.
Oh. Sure.
I can if you want me to.
What, Jane?
What?
I can screen share it if you want me to. If that would be easier.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
I didn't even know you guys could do that. See, I'm the Blackboard idiot, and I feel like I've learned so much.
You're doing great.
Thank you.
You just remember what you're all.
Sorry, it started playing. Let's get to, there it is.
So where is it that specifically that it got shared?
In the chat.
So this is great. The pawing is, it's kind of no different than what I described about a dog pawing a human. The dog that's pawing is trying to get it wants to interact or play with the other dog. It looks mostly like, in these pictures, it mostly looks like I want to play. I like you, interact with me. That's what they all look like in a very sweet way. So there's nothing I see in the dogs that are being like, they're not being like really pushy or assertive. They're just being like, come on, I want to play with you. That's my take on it.
Okay, thanks.
Did you have a peeing question?
The peeing question that you came up for me was, when they try and pee super high, are they trying to trick other dogs into thinking there's a like really dominant dog in the neighborhood?
They're trying to be the really dominant dog in the neighborhood.
So even if like there are a lot of videos of pugs doing handstands and peeing because
They're trying to make themselves bigger, appear bigger to other dogs that may sniff their pee.
So what if another dog sniffed that pee and then met that dog? Would they, despite the size, if the pee was high enough, would they think that that dog was the most dominant in the neighborhood?
Probably not, because they can, and again, I say probably not because I've never been asked that question and I've never looked into it or had that come up in the researching I do. But it's kind of like you would look at the pee as one singular expression of behavior or stature. But when they meet face to face, then the dogs size each other up in a much more holistic way. It's kind of like why even if you have a dog with a docked tail, another dog will be confused by that tail, but will still be able, if it can read the rest of the body, it's still gonna get a good read on the dog. I know you love pugs, and I own 3 bulldogs, but it's when you start getting into dogs that have almost no ability to make facial expressions or ear expressions, often can't fit their tongues are too big for their mouths, and then they have, you know, messed up tails or no tails. That's when you're going to have far more of a problem, because you're looking at so many body parts, as opposed to say an Australian Shepherd, which most of them are still born without tails. But you can read the entire rest of the body, so the lack of tail won't have a huge effect. If, you know, what you would more, going back to the peeing thing, would be as if 2 dogs were in the same place at the same time. Many of you may have seen that, and it's called a pissing match, right? One dog pees, and then the other dog pees on top of it, and then another dog, the first dog goes back and pees on top of that, and they just keep doing that, having a pissing match to see who's the mightier dog. And again, much more common in males, but it is seen in females, and you can have pissing matches between males and females as well as same gender.
Okay, one last question, quickly.
Okay.
Is the reason dogs are so scared of cats is because they have no way of understanding them?
Well, first of all, not all dogs are afraid of cats. A lot of dogs look at cats as squirrels. So it is often genetic. There could be a genetic component to how a dog feels about a cat, but it's far less common for a dog to be afraid of a cat than the reverse. And most dogs that are afraid of cats are because the cat, excuse me, is being very assertive. And the dog like has a right. It's like, okay, I should be afraid of this cat because it's going to claw me in the face.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Up next, we have Leah. Are they still here? Leah, did you want to go next, or did you already ask a question?
Hi, sorry, I'm having trouble with my screen right now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I know you talked about like displacement behavior of like the dog sniffing the ground. Would a dog licking the ground also be considered like an act of stress? Because I know like some dogs, but right before they get sick, they like to lick the ground.
Yeah, so those 2 things are not connected. I haven't seen a dog sniff and lick, and I would separate those because they're very different behaviors. And you're right, a lot of dogs will lick the ground because they want to throw up. So a lot of dogs, if a dog is like licking the floor over and over and over again, either they probably have a stomach ache or they have an obsessive compulsive disorder if they do it all the time. But it would not be a displacement behavior.
Oh, okay.
Did we hear from Catherine? Did we hear from you?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, because people's positions are moving around, so I'll rely on you.
I have a list of who's asked questions and who hasn't.
I'll shut up.
Okay, Nicole, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So if two dogs are meeting for the first time, and they're like on leash, but they're able to get close and kind of sniff each other, is this, and they're friendly, is that an honest depiction of how they would act off leash, or could they act totally differently in like an open field?
Dogs will always be able to express true emotion best off leash. If you need to introduce two dogs on leash, the most important thing you want to do is prevent the leash from getting tight. So you end up kind of the two owners or whoever are holding the leashes, you tend to get like, you do this little leash dance where you're constantly moving and you're untangling the leashes. And if you can keep the leashes very loose, you'll get as close to a real greeting as possible. But if the dogs are like straining to get to each other and the owners are pulling back, which is what usually happens, again, humans are the leading cause of dog-dog problems. So if you do it properly, then, because you can't take them off leash, but you keep that leash really loose and you don't say anything and you don't laugh and you don't do anything to interrupt that interaction, you'll get a fairly real greeting.
Okay, thank you.
The loose leash dance is a very serious skill.
It takes a lot of experience.
It's really fun once you get the hang of it to like maneuver. And it is like a dance. It's like an interpretive dance. You just growl at me? Sorry. Percy is very needy. Also, I don't know if this is actually something that would be shown in this class, but here, Percy, I know. If you can see right there, that's like he has a lip granuloma right there.
Is that the same one you showed us last week?
No, this is a different one. He started a new one. He's
Nice.
started a new spot, but he is like a dog that will like do the constant licking and like he's the king of displacement behaviors. He does them constantly. Okay, up next we have Savannah. Did you want to go next?
Yeah, I just have a question about the squinty eyes. So say like a dog got into the trash and it did the like smile and the squinty eyes. Would that be it saying like, I know that I'm in trouble, but like, please don't punish me?
It would be saying, when there's trash on the floor and a human comes into the room, the human's going to be mean to me, and I'm going to do everything I can to try and prevent that person from being mean to me because I have no idea why they're being mean. An example, a way that I explain this further in class, dogs get in trash and they eat lots of really good things, and there is absolutely no way a dog can understand this human concept that we don't want. I mean, people think dogs shouldn't get into trash. Dogs should know better, which is completely ridiculous because they're scavengers. So the reality is humans should prevent the dog from getting in the trash. And if the dog gets in the trash, the human should go, stupid human, instead of getting mad at the dog. And I have oftentimes, when I can't get people to believe me, because everybody says, but I come home and my dog cowers, or it does, it squints its eyes and it cowers down and it does its little, tongue flicks, and it so clearly it knows it's doing something wrong. The reality is the dog is trying to appease the human, because suddenly their human comes in, and for absolutely no reason the dog can understand, the human acts mean. And when people don't believe me, if their dog has a habit, like it's a repeated habit, the dog's always getting in the trash, you can stand in the room with the dog and the owner and take the trash and dump it on the ground, and you will get the same fear reaction out of the dog. It's kind of like I know like I didn't enforce reading after we went online, but Gene Donaldson talks a lot about this kind of stuff in The Culture Clash, where we assume that dogs know better. My dog knows it should come when it calls. It knows what come means. If your dog isn't coming when called, it's undertrained. And I fall guilty of that. Falcon, when he is out in my fenced yard and he is barking, he will not come when called. And it drives me insane. But if I want it to stop, I need to train him to come in the yard when he's barking. It's my fault, not his. And it's the same thing with trash or dogs that, you know, rip up blankets or chew the chairs. It's, we haven't trained the dog, and the dog has no idea that it's doing something that the human's going to get mad at them for. Now, I don't mean to sound harsh to you, but it's just like one of those really common misnomers that if we were actually in the real classroom, by the end of the semester would make a ton of sense. Like, it probably wouldn't be a question in your head anymore. But I'm only doing the best I can, which I apologize for.
You're doing great.
Who said that, Jane?
Me.
Oh, thank you. I'm trying. It's not what I want it to be. But hopefully a lot of you will take canine behavior and will be on campus, and you'll get to fill in tons of blanks and have a lot more fun with dogs.
CB
Okay.
is the best class ever. Please take it. I'll do the advertisements for it. All right, up next is Carly, and I know that in the chat she said that she had to step away for a moment. So she put her question in the chat just really quick. Carly, are you here? Or I can also read her question. So her question was, how else do we see appeasement behaviors besides a dog holding their paw up?
That's a really specific, unique behavior similar to a tongue flick or a displacement behavior. So that paw lift is like its own gesture, but as dogs become yielding or deferential, those are also often could be considered appeasement, because when you think about the definition of appeasing or yielding or deferential, you could consider them synonyms in many ways. So all the pictures that displayed dogs showing yielding behaviors, you could say, yes, my dog is trying to appease that person or that dog or the cat or the UPS driver. It's just that the word appeasement, for whatever reason, is attached to that paw lift.
All right, and then Emma, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah. Sorry, I wrote them down. Back to the dog peeing on everything. You said that how submissive the dog is can change if they lift their leg or not. Can it also change if they kick after they pee?
In general, yes. Most dogs that lift their leg high, or female dogs will lift their legs as well. A dog that tilts to its side. So anytime a dog is trying to lift its leg high, scratch its pee out, etc., tends to be a dog that is normally on the more assertive side with other dogs. But again, just like us, and we talked about mixed emotions, you could get a dog that asserts itself when it urinates, and in almost any other way is very yielding or deferential to another dog.
Yeah, that's what my dog does. She's scared of everything in the house and every other dog, but when we're outside, she'll kick a lot when she pees.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, I mean, we all, every dog has its anomaly. We'll talk in the house a lot about what borders we like or we don't like, basically which ones are easy keepers and which ones are really difficult. And I always point out that within our own dogs, there are things that annoy us too. And it's just like with humans, you can love someone, unendingly, but that doesn't change the fact that we all do things that annoy each other, no matter how much we care about each other. And you're going to see that from dog to dog as well as from owner to dog.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. That's everybody who's asked questions, unless anybody has an extra question that they want to ask. No?
Okay, so Jane, you're gonna hold a study session next week, yes?
Yes.
And it'll be a 4 on Wednesday?
Yes.
Beautiful. So prepare your questions, look through your notes. Your exam will be, I know you didn't have a second exam, but your exam will be very much like the first exam you took, and Jane will get into it in more detail during the study session. Thank you all. I hope you have a great evening. It's nice to see your faces, and I hope everybody's staying healthy.